Hello and welcome back to the Shmuseum, where today is all about the Ford GT, one of the flagship cars here in my collection, and a car that has both such a special story itself, but also my personal story. And I want to go into a lot of detail today about the car, about the ownership experience, and about everything that I think really connects to it. I've owned it for almost 3 years now, but today I'd like to almost reintroduce you to the car, have a bit of an induction tour to go through it, what it was all about, why it existed, and then to run over many of the very, very cool bespoke details that we have on this car, making it almost effectively a one-of-one. But you'll also notice I've got quite a few things that I'd like to share with you here as well, things that I've acquired through the ownership experience, things that I think are all part of the story. Now, the Ford GT for me has always been a car that's about the story. The reason for the new GT's existence to begin with is because of that famous legendary story. Going back to the 1960s, Ford at the 24 Hours of Lamar, when Henry Ford was unable to purchase Ferrari from Enzo Ferrari, instead going to make a racing car to take to the famous race, and then winning it 4 years on the trot with the full trio of the spots on the podium in 1966, winning again in 67, 68 and 69, before in 2015, after 49 years, introducing a new race car that would race on the 50th anniversary, effectively the race version of this, which in 2016, on that anniversary, was again victorious at Le Mans, winning the GTE Pro class. Now, this is a car that from the ground up, they developed the race car and the road car together. Unlike the GT that had come in 2004, 2005, 2006, that model had been a 100-year celebration of Ford, but not specifically a race car. This is thoroughbred track car, the very clever suspension, the exceptional aerodynamics, a very, very cool looking thing for the modern era, the new V6 engine, and to me, this story and reason for its existence, as opposed to being a car that would, let's say, just sell some cars on the books, it was a loss leader for Ford. It was a car that cost so much to develop and engineer and to work with Multimatic. It just makes it that bit more special as a result. And that's why this specific example, chassis number J211, has become something even more than that for me. As you look around the car and you start down towards the front, you do have this nose that wraps all the way around, very reminiscent of the older cars, some fantastic headlights. The design of these is brilliant. The iconic dual racing stripe that runs up over the top. You've got a very, very long car, a very wide car, a very low car. It's very, very sleek in its appearance, in its style. And then you have these floating buttresses. How cool is this, that you can literally see straight through the side of the car? This is all to do with airflow, having the teardrop cabin back here for the optimized aerodynamics. Of course, this is where you have the 3.5 litre twin turbocharged V6, 656 metric horsepower, 647 brake horsepower coming from that, 7-speed dual clutch gearbox, all the power going to the rear wheels. And then this tail end, this design that you have of it, the active rear spoiler currently parked in the raised position. It's a car that I think looks awesome. And then, well, I want to go more as well into the specifics of this car. Now, given the history of the Ford GT, given everything it had represented, I wanted to make mine a bit of a tribute in its own right, hence the choice of a colour scheme that would link back as well to a famous race team, in particular Alan Mann Racing, who are based in Woking here in England, who used to race in the various different Ford classes, the Formula 3000, the Escort Mark 1s, the GT40s, and had some exceptional drivers as well, the likes of Jackie Ickx, Bruce McLaren, who of course has always been close to me with a couple of McLarens in the collection. And as such, I went with what they called liquid red, which is a modern, deep, pearlescent, beautiful, rich colour, and combined it with the stripes in Alan Mann Racing Gold. Now, the kind folks at Alan Mann Racing allowed me to colour match that exactly to the historic paints that they used to make this a bit of a one-off from the beginning. Now, when I took delivery of the Ford GT here in, well, just before Christmas 2018, the first stop was, of course, to go to Topaz Detailing to get a full paint protection film over the entire car. Now, with a car like this, with, well, at the time it was brand new, no templates or anything like that, the guys had to work on all of the panels and make sure everything was done correctly. But obviously the result is that all of the painted sections, all of the satin carbon fibre, even the headlights and everything else are all fully protected to make sure we don't get any stone chips or damage down the line. When that was done, the next change that I made, in fact, was to the wheels. Thanks to InnoKinetic, we have the set of BBS FIRs. Now, the really cool thing about these wheels is that they actually weigh, as a set of 4, the same as the full carbon wheel option that you can have on the Ford GT, but these are in fact the wheel design run on the GT LM race car, the 5 twin Y-spoke style design with these hollowed out sections to save weight, finished in Lamar grey as well, the same colour as on the race car. So this is a pretty special set of wheels provided through InnoKinetic as well, wearing the Sport Cup 2 tyres. So I put the new wheels on. After that though, the car then, a few months later, went over to Italy to Sparco, who make the OEM interior in terms of the seats, to do a few bespoke modifications. And of course we had the dihedral doors with the aero you can see down through the front, which is always quite fun as well. And we'll touch on something for that later as well. But inside here, if you come and take a look, we added to the black Alcantara with the additional red and gold stitching around the seats, and also on the headrest embroidery as well, having the GT logo in gold. You can see the Sparco badges, the tags in the center, and we've also got the full 4-point harnesses. They're just tucked away at the moment as well, but these mount onto the brackets on the bulkhead behind. But this is all effectively OEM done, and there weren't very many options you could do for the Ford GT. I think in fact this was probably the first ever car to have a custom painted stripe on it, and one of very few even until today that do as well. And it was actually the last of the first batch of European cars. There were originally 80 European cars. There's now a second batch in 2021 and 22, but this was the last of the original ones. So after doing the seats and doing all of those changes, the next stop was to go and visit ADP, who are responsible for the steering wheel. And you'll notice we have the gold shift paddles sitting behind the steering wheel. You can normally only have, I think, the grey ones, black ones, or red on the competition cars. And we also have the cross stitch around the inside of the steering wheel as well to match with the seats. So having that bespoke red and gold touch to the interior, in a way like the heritage cars, like the Golf version of the car, for example, just some very cool, very unique details to this particular Ford GT. The only other change that I've made was when I was over in the USA with this car. It still boggles my mind that it was over in the USA. Stopped by Galpin Ford in Los Angeles and installed the US spec Akrapovic Sports Titanium exhaust, which really brought it to life. The European cars, for homologation reasons, were not very loud. Much, much, much quieter than even the fans. When you have the fans running on this, when it's idling, you don't even really hear the stock exhaust. So having that fitted was a welcome upgrade. My stock exhaust is actually in the USA with gold vart, and we're going to see more of that very soon also. But in terms of options and upgrades, you could say, I kept it fairly safe and sensible, not gone over the top, no engine modifications, just nice details that really represent what the car is about, the red and gold color scheme, the Lamar wheels, the Akrapovic US exhaust, the standard optional upgrade exhaust you can order on the car over in the USA, just not going wild with it, doing the interior, making it personal, making it, you could say, I think, my own heritage edition, my own, if you could say it like that. Of course, they did each year a special heritage that would link back to a car from that year. So in the first year of production, they did one like the original black car that won at Le Mans in 66, the next year like the winner at 67 in red, the next year the 68 and 69 winners were the Golf car. It was actually the same car with the number 6 and then the number 9, and then 2 other different heritage editions that they've done for the 2021, 2022 cars that have followed since. But this is a one-off. This is a very special car. And I didn't actually mention that we did something a little bit different with the number plate. I want to show you this very quickly. The standard European cars come with this particularly horrible number plate plinth, which normally sits there. It covers the nose cone of the car, loses this definition of the stripes, and yeah, I was never a big fan of that. So thanks to the guys at Topaz, we actually got this bespoke plinth made using the same bracket points underneath, and it's held the plate there ever since, while allowing it to look much, much nicer in the process. So I guess one other thing to show you, let's come around towards the back if we're touching on some of the induction feature type elements. Of course, the way you open the car is like this, but a lot of people don't know that you can lock it just pressing on there. Of course, we've got the key. Now, a few comments have been made over the years. The key is effectively a normal Ford Mustang key, but with the GT logo on it. But when it comes to road tripping in this car, which I've tried to do a few times, I've taken it on an overnight ferry over to Sardinia for a day and then an overnight ferry straight back. And it was a squeeze because back here, the extent of your luggage capacity is that. You basically have the toolkit and tire inflator. You can have your C-Tech smart charger in its bag just sitting in there, but otherwise you've just got the engine. That engine, which was very controversial at first, a lot of people thinking the car should have a V8, but believe me, when you drive it, the V6 is a very, very nice power unit, and it really sounds good as well when you're out on the road. So it's a car, like I said, that I've done so many miles with, and I've enjoyed so much along the way as well, and done just so many things that mean I could never sell it. This is like me in a car, just enjoying driving it. I've done 7,000 miles or so in the car in total so far. But I want to show you a bit more what we have here. The journey starting from, well, before even delivery of the car through to today, because this is one of the biggest things for me here with the Shmuseum, is to be able to have all of these things eventually on show, to put up the offices, to have the lounge area, to have the opportunity to be able to enjoy some of the story that goes with the car. And all of these are very personalized items. And like I said, the journey begins before even delivery of the car. We'll rewind back to this box, which I've shown over on the Shmee 150 channel before, but I always find it such a cool thing to be able to take a look at, which are the original order kit for the Ford GT. And I've picked up a few additional samples along the way as well, but you might have seen this before. It's the very, very cool carbon fiber box that Ford made for customers of the GT. So in here, you have this box from carbon fiber. It has the racing latch on it, just like, say, the front clams of a racing car. And then you can open it up, where inside you have this lovely tray of all of the different samples and paint options that you can have on the car. For example, the interiors that you could choose. Launch control was the bright orange that was presented against the blue, the navy blue Alcantara as well. All of these finished with the same metal trims. You also have these paint sample molds where you can take off the stripes. You can actually move the stripes from one to the other if you want to get an idea of how they look. And they actually had made up as well when we were doing the samples for Lamar, the stripes in the same gold. So you can see exactly how those look. So I had this before I had the car, and I was kind of looking at that all day, every day, very excited for when it would eventually arrive. Plus we've got the wheels and the calipers. Pull these out as well, and you've got more wheels underneath, the carbon fiber wheels, in fact, there. And this was so innovative. I've never seen anything like this. And Ford sent these packs out to every customer. And it actually doesn't even end there. And I've been a bit weak on this, because when it's all closed back up, you can even put on the front of it, there's this little spot that it has here to put on your chassis plaque, which you actually get with the car. He says, how do you do this? Which I've got as well, but like I say, I've never put it on. But it's that easy, and you can have that. I can't wait to have that out on display. In addition, I also picked up at some point along the way an additional one here, which was the Golf blue with orange stripes when they made the Heritage. And I think I've got another, here, another Lamar red and gold as well. It was a slightly different shade. So it's lovely to have those kind of things and features and details. But then after that, I also had made, as I have with all of the Shmeemobiles, my 1:18 scale models in the exact specifications of the cars. So we have this in the red and gold, even with the wheels. It does have the the gold calipers, because I was thinking for a long time to do gold calipers on it after I had decided not to do the gold wheels. Originally, I thought I'd do gold wheels to match the gold stripes. Then I decided maybe I'll just do gold calipers, but then I kind of fell for it as it is, just with the gold center caps that we have with the BBS logos. But I love having those. I have one for all of my cars that I've ever owned in the same scale, all looking very, very nice together. If we come on through though, we get a bit more towards delivery of the Ford GT. We've got a lovely little box that came here. Let's open this up and show you inside, a metal box. And inside here, we have a book which basically tells you a little bit more about the ordering process. So the specs, your concierge details, there's a business card just tucked in there, and then the different options and things. So this was basically the spec process that you would go through with the car, teaching you a little bit more about how that was going to be running and what would happen when you eventually would get through towards the actual build of your very car. It was really a very involving experience. And like I said, I've not seen anything like that. Every manufacturer has a different approach doing this kind of thing, but Ford, given they don't normally make cars like this, went straight in at the deep end and absolutely nailed it. Now, on delivery of the car, it came with these two folders, which are again lovely things. I just need to show this carefully because it's got my address on it. But this was a letter from Bill Ford. Gives me great pleasure to congratulate you on being selected for the opportunity to purchase a new Ford GT, which was so exciting. To be in that lucky position to secure an allocation to get the car was, I mean, I remember getting that email coming through and I just could not believe it. I had no idea at the time how I was going to afford the car. It was a massive step up from anything I'd had before at that time. But yeah, that was an exciting day. And then also it came with this folder, which has in it a number of different things to open up. And I showed this briefly recently. But inside here, we have, firstly, some build photos. So from the assembly line, Multimatic in Canada, they take a number of photos to give to each customer. So that is my very car. You can see the red and gold roof being built. And the roof is actually bonded to the tub. So the roof is painted a couple of weeks before the rest of the car. It's quite an unusual process, but an awesome set of photos. I did actually go to visit the car myself at the factory, which was in Markham, Ontario, near to Toronto, which was awesome to head out there. But to be able to have those memories as well. And then in traditional US style, we have the window sticker, which tells you the full specification and details. Obviously for an export car, it's all slightly different. And then we also have the final spec list of the car, along with, as I said, the piece, maybe this is sealed at the moment, the sticker here, J211, that then goes onto my ordering kit. So at some point I'll try and be organized enough to do that. This actually tells you about a few other things. The watch, the luggage, and the race suit kit, which we're going to go through in a moment, and a couple of other things that as customers you had the opportunity to purchase as well. And I've never yet bought the watch that goes with the car, but I am thinking perhaps that should be something on my radar. I think it'd be a nice thing to add to my memorabilia, we could say, of the Ford GT. Now, one of the next things I purchased were these, but I've never actually fitted them to the car, which are effectively screens that you would install down here when the door is open to stop stones pinging up. Our solution here was to go with having double layered PPF down there, so I've never really used them, but they would stop it getting so chipped up or damaged if you, nearly drop it. They would stop it getting chipped up or damaged if you did obviously pop those in place on the car itself. Then lastly here, I'd like to show you on the top of the table, is the kit from Sparco. Now when we did the interior of the car with Sparco, we also did this. As a Ford GT customer, you got the opportunity to purchase the luggage and the full race suit kit, effectively, that goes with the car. So the suit, the shoes, the gloves, and the helmet, and the case. And not only that, but in the case of this, we've got the same red and gold stitching, using the exact same materials. We've got my chassis number, J211, and of course the Union Jack, being a UK car as well, and the matching helmet. So to show you inside this very quickly, which is of course all pristine, we have the gloves with the gold GT logo on them. We have the race suit, which is effectively the Ford GT Lamar race suit. So if I open this up quickly, you can see in here, we've got the gold logos, gold GT logo, all the sponsors of the World Endurance Championship team, and even my chassis number as well, J211 on the waistband. We've got a US flag, being a US car, of course, as well. And then finally, I think in here, we've also got the shoes, which are again in red and gold. I know it's very cliche, but it's just so much part of the experience with the car. Plus, we've got the original shift paddles in the anodized black, of course, that were replaced by the gold ones as well. And this all tucks away. And believe it or not, if you take out the kit that's in the back, this does fit in that storage space. I have tried it, it definitely works. Here we have the helmet. Let me open this up. I'm not sure if I've even ever tried this helmet on, to be honest, but have a look at it in a second. It's really nice. Again, like the Ford GT race team, J211 with the gold GT logo. It's so cool. I love seeing this stuff, and imagine what it's going to be like having these things out on display properly. That's something I really can't wait for. A couple of other things to mention here. This painting by Martin Tomlinson, take a look at this. It's effectively capturing the moment of the 1, 2 and 3 Ford GT40s in 1966 at the famous Circuit de la Sarthe, with my car imposed, with me somehow driving on the famous circuit. I think it's a wonderful encompassing of a famous moment and my own memories of the car and what I've done with it. And Martin's artworks are truly incredible. He does some amazing, amazing pieces, some of which you might have seen in my videos before, even for roof headliners inside Aston Martin models, my SLS Black Series painting as well. So I'll pop his details down below if you'd like to see more of those. We also have the illuminated light, the light that came from an old Ford garage, in fact. That was found for me by Puppy, so that's certainly going to end up somewhere here on display a little bit down the line. Those aren't everything that I've accumulated with the car. It's much more even than that, but I think those are some of the key items that really stand out from this story for me. This story that we're now 2 years and 3/4 into with the Ford GT, having driven it, as I said, about 7,000 miles, from collecting it, from going to Sardinia, from going all around Europe, to going to Monaco, to doing a track day at Silverstone, to taking it numerous times to the Nürburgring in Germany, to then flying it to New York, having it down in Miami, across to LA, up to San Francisco, driving PCH, driving through Death Valley over towards Las Vegas, taking it to Chicago, taking it to Detroit, of course the hometown of Ford, taking this car all around and just enjoying it, even if it's not the most usable car for the purpose. Both the lack of luggage combined with the complete lack of fuel economy, to be desperately honest. You do not get huge range out of each tank with this car, but just building that connection with it. And for me, that's so much of what these cars are about. It's one thing to be able to purchase the car and to be able to store it in a garage and maybe take it out every now and then, but to do these kind of journeys and to do these kind of adventures with it, to learn about it, to take in some of the foibles. Yes, I've had new tires. Yes, I've had new brake pads on it. And that was an interesting thing at the time to do with the cost of them. But overall, it's actually been fairly reasonable to keep this car going. It had to have a 600-mile running in service. It had to have a service a year later out in Los Angeles, of all places, when it was there at Galpin for the exhaust. It then had another service back over here in the UK. So it's been globally serviced and maintained, but because I've seen it open and because I've seen things being worked on, you get more of an understanding of how this works. For example, the coolers that you have here, they're actually separated for 2 different channels. They direct airflow through pipework that goes back through the buttress and into the engine bay. Yes, that way. Not instinctive at all, but the engineering here is so very clever. And I'm sure you've seen the race mode where when you have the car started, you can just drop it down, slams 2 inches, and it will drop it into race mode onto that secondary suspension system, effectively the more race-orientated setup, looking even cooler in the process, but crucially also being even more dynamic out on the racetrack. And interestingly, the Ford GT is not as fast as, say, the McLaren Senna. It's not in that same league even as the 765 LT or probably the Pista or probably a host of other newer cars. But in a world where I would argue performance has in many ways lost the plot, this is really a usable level, an enjoyable level, allows you to rev through it, allows you to make some noise out of it, allows you to have some engagement with it without going completely mad. And it's a car that just looks so cool. When the passenger is sitting in the car, they're looking back through that flying buttress. When you're driving it, you're sat very, very centrally. It's a tiny cabin. And that means that, yes, you're brushing shoulders effectively with your passenger, but you feel very in the middle of the car. In fact, around to the side of the car, this is something that's quite interesting. If you look at where the seat is positioned, you know, the headrest is about here. It's actually towards the back of the car than the front. You don't realize how much of it is out in front of you because of how elongated it is through this section, all nicely integrated into the design, this very smooth wedge, very Lamborghini-esque almost in the shape of the car. But it means as a result that you're in some ways with a tiny engine behind you, feeling like you're in almost a front mid-engine car as opposed to a rear mid. It's very light, it's very, very nimble, it's very sure-footed, it's very, very exciting to drive, as I said. And it's a car that I've kept in immaculate shape. It's been fully maintained and it will always be fully maintained. The Ford concierge team have always been fantastic, and that's a big part of the experience as well. The community is amazing. All the people that I've met who own GTs, whether they're in Dubai in the Middle East, out in the US, around Europe, it's such a close community. Everybody is fantastic because everybody is so passionate, which is what made it possible, I think, for them to be able to secure allocations to purchase one of these. And it was such a competitive thing at the time. There had been 4,500 of the previous Ford GTs, with Ford only intending to make a run of these 250 a year for 4.5 years or so. I think it'll be a touch more than that in total, but such a small run overall that it meant to be able to secure one was obviously quite the challenge. There was a lot of demand, and I felt very, very lucky to be able to do so. And certainly at the time, I think a lot of people thought that I would just go on to flip it, I would never drive it, and I would like to think that I've been able to demonstrate otherwise along the way, using this car in every way that it should. And hopefully at some point in many, many, many years to come, I'll be able to pass it down through generations in my family. And I think that will be, you know, the car that really in many ways has defined this era of what I've been doing, of the Shmee 150 and the Shmuseum channels as well. So the Ford GT, it's a very, very special thing. It always will be, but I wanted to take you on this full run through to go a bit more through the car, to go a bit more through as well some of the other lovely things that I've picked up to add to the collection, all of which will before long be on full display here at the Shmuseum. That's it for now though, and we'll see you next time.